Hello, I'm Nick Curtis, the Standard's chief theatre critic, and I'm here today at the Ambassadors Theatre to talk to Catherine Tate, who is starring in the Enfield Haunting, a fictionalised version of the poltergeist case that gripped the North London suburb back in the 1970s. You're co-starring in this play with David Threlfall. Tell us a little bit about it. What is the Enfield Haunting about?
This version of the Enfield Haunting is a fictional take on a day in the lives of the family who experienced the real version of the Enfield Haunting. And the Enfield Haunting, if anyone, if people don't know, as I didn't, to be fair, I didn't know about the story. In the 1970s, a family, working class family, single mum and her kids, experienced what they later understood to be a poltergeist in their house. And because of, I suppose, the attention it garnered in their little community, the police got involved. Well, actually, I think one of the neighbours called the police, and then from then the newspapers got involved. And it kind of, as I understand it, it kind of really gripped the nation for a while. And I didn't know that.
I'd sort of missed out on it. I was reading up on it a bit before this morning, and it seems extraordinary that all these sort of magicians got involved to see whether
100%. Yeah, apparently, because within it there was I guess the central, I don't know what you'd call it, victim of the poltergeist or host, I suppose, was the youngest girl, Janet, and she apparently was possessed by the spirit of the neighbour. Sorry, not the neighbour, the former occupant of their house who died in the house. I think an elderly gentleman. And because, if you believe it, he was speaking through her. And there's tapes of this young girl.
I listened to some of it.
With an extraordinary different range of voice.
Creepy as hell, isn't it?
Creepy. But, the non-believers, they sent in ventriloquists to sort of examine how she was making this sound. And professional ventriloquists said they didn't know how a young girl could make these noises. So
extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
Yes. Can you tell us whether the play decides whether it was real or not, or is that too much of a spoiler to give away?
Well, I can tell you, and it would be a spoiler. So
okay, well, let's not do that.
Not if you want me to
are the audience allowed to make up their own mind about? Are they sort of left to make up their own mind about it? Or?
I would say, because we are doing a play inspired by real events, and we are not saying that this is the. We are not doing a true to life version of what happened.
Yeah.
I would say what the audience go and do is I would be very surprised if most of the audience who had their curiosity piqued didn't go and Google it themselves.
Right, I see. Yes. Yeah.
So yes, we do definitely come down on one side, because I think when you are choosing to take a story, tell it in a certain way and make it your own, you have to. I think you do. I mean, of course, you want to embrace the ambiguity to as much as you can.
Yes.
But at some point, I feel as storytellers, you have to go. You have to leave people going out satisfied.
Yes, I see what you mean. Yeah, it seems like there's a sort of there's always space for one ghost story in the West End, doesn't it?
I guess
there
so.
was The Woman in Black for so long, and then there was 222, a ghost story with its multiple changing leads all the time, and now this. It's interesting that genre, which you would think was almost the most old-fashioned of theatrical ones, is still out there punching in a way that lots of stuff like.
I'm actually surprised that there is only one, because in other genres it's really picked up. This curiosity for the supernatural, Most Haunted, and there's podcasts galore about it, there's shows about it, the supernatural investigations, and there's a big appetite, I think, for it. And someone I was speaking to said, do you think it's anything to do with the fact that apparently in COVID there was a huge surge of interest in the supernatural.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, is that because it was an unsettled time?
Mm.
And is it because it's an unsettled time, so we want to pick that scab more? Or is it because it's so unsettled you want to go and find something that's even worse, and by comparison realise actually we're all right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yes, I'm sure you're right about that. Yeah,
I do wonder.
Have you ever had a supernatural happening, either in a theatre or out of it? This isn't one of London's haunted theatres, I believe,
No.
the Ambassadors, is it?
I don't know. I
had a quick look. I think the Duke of York's is one of the most
Is it?
haunted, supposedly, which I think
Really?
you've played, haven't you?
I have played the Duke of York's, yeah. I have never. I've never had a supernatural encounter as far as I know.
Right. Okay.
But I certainly wouldn't, because, you know, it's a question you get asked, do you believe in it? And it's like, well, I feel that the only thing I can say is I have no reason not to, and I have no concrete proof
Yes.
to. Do you know what I mean? So I think I'd have to come down squarely, and I could not close any door, and I feel we'd be foolish to say we knew one way or the other.
Fair enough. A lot of our listeners will obviously know your TV and film work, particularly Doctor Who and the Catherine Tate show.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very familiar with your work for the RSC and, you know, the West End, much to about nothing that you did with David Tennant and so on. Is it important for you to come back to sort of exercise the stage muscles after, you know, every once in a while?
Oh, absolutely. I would do much more theatre. Theatre would be my absolute kind of go-to. If I were lucky enough to just have a constant career in theatre, although I think my kind of natural need for variety kicks in, and it's why you go off and do other things, and then that leads to other things. But I always would gravitate back towards the theatre,
Right.
because I love being in front of an audience.
Is it this might be a silly question, but is it easier when you're interpreting someone else's words rather than, say, generating your own material as you've done through so much of your career?
There's pluses and minuses. When you're in charge of the whole thing, the plus is you're in charge of the whole thing, which is also the minus.
Yes.
Because it's all the responsibility is yours. Everything falls on your plate. When you're doing someone else's, they're the same pluses and minuses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you suddenly. When I'm doing purely stuff I've done, I'm thinking, God, if only all I did was just turn up and said my lines, and that was all I had to do. And then when I end up doing that, I feel I miss the other strings to the bow of being able to be more in control.
Yes. How was it, I have to ask, going back into Doctor Who, working again with David Tennant and leading into the Tootie as the new incarnation?
The Era. It was fantastic, lovely. Couldn't. I don't think either of us could believe that we'd ever get a second bite of that cherry.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. And just a strange and wonderful mix of the familiar, because we'd done it before, and the new, because it was different. It was properly rebooted.
Yes.
But of course, mine and David and I playing the same character. Well, I definitely was playing the same character. I suppose you could argue David's playing another version of his Doctor. But, the relationship between these two characters is the same. David and I being good friends, and that's a wonderful thing to always return to. But there was something just new and different and bigger and grander and more magical about it.
Yeah.
And exciting, because we were sort of launching, just springboarding in and passing the reins on very, quite actually passing the reins on.
Do you think Tootie will be a good Doctor?
Oh, wonderful! I just think he's got all those qualities that you want in a fantastic Doctor. He's a brilliant actor. He can sort of turn on a dime. He's got this, he's incredibly magnetic, and hugely watchable.
He's very charismatic, isn't he?
Oh,
yes.
bags of charisma. Yeah.
You and David Tennant seem to enjoy a very sort of symbiotic working relationship.
Yes.
It seems like there's very easy chemistry between you.
Yes.
Was that always been the case, or did that sort of grow through the course of the series?
I think it actually surprised everyone, because it started I did a one-off Runaway Bride. Yeah. And I remember I wasn't able to do the what's called the read-through, the table read. Yeah. which happens a few weeks before you start filming, and it's where, you know, all the actors, the writer, the producer, everyone just sort of sits around a table and reads the episode. And one of the things that's good for is for actors who've not worked together to just sort of see how you bounce off each other and stuff like that. Well, I wasn't available for it. So we didn't even know how we were gonna gel together. And it happened very quickly. And I always remember that was the first scene we ever did in The Runaway Bride, and it was just a two-hander between us, and we were supposed to be on top of a building, and it just clicked. And
Yes.
I remember the producer watching the rushes of it and saying, "Oh gosh, something magical's happened. We're watching it, the two of you, your chemistry is really great." And it just sort of grew.
It must be an extraordinary thing to be part of, Doctor Who. Such a sort of progressive and consistently progressive series, you know, for so long, with the first female Doctor, now the first black Doctor. Do you think it's a sort of a force for good out there in the world, Doctor Who?
I definitely do. I mean, I've never made any bones about the fact that Doctor Who, when I was a kid, it wasn't my kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about... You know, I'm not David in the sense that it's in his blood, you know. He loved, and like Russell, they grew up
or
watching
Peter
it
Capaldi,
and loved
yes,
it. Yes, right. It just wasn't for me. I knew it existed, and I sort of knew about it, but I can honestly say I had no idea until I became part of it how loved it is. You know, it's loved, and people have a real ownership of it, and they are genuinely lovely people as well. So I think it must be a force for good.
Right, good. On the street, do people generally recognise you as Donna Noble from Doctor Who, or do they shout bothered at you still these days?
I would say it's a mix of both. It's if in London, it's usually me as my own show.
Right, right.
But I have to say, but you see, it's almost like I've got this sort of like three-pronged attack, because I've got my own show, and then there's Doctor Who, which is really international, it seems. But I'm always surprised at how. And then I was in an American show called The Office, which in America is really loved, and so you kind of have this. It's almost like The Office, I kind of feel, is almost like Only Fools and Horses or something is here. You know what I mean? It's something that people are really familiar with and really fond of and really love it. And so I'm often in America very much known as the character I played on The Office.
Yeah.
But I'm really surprised at how my own comedy travels.
Yes.
I think that's really. I have a huge debt of gratitude to pay to social media for that, because even though I'm not on social media, my stuff is uploaded all the time, and I think it's shared, and you know, YouTube and everything like that, and TikToks and stuff like that. And I could be walking somewhere in, like, you know, Ohio, and someone will come up to me and go, "Are you the translator?" You know what I mean? It's really strange.
Lovely.
Yeah, so it's lovely.
That's great. That's a lovely thing to have. And it's lovely to have you back on stage, Catherine Tate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Standard Theatre Podcast.
Pleasure.